Hi, Brooke.
Hi.
Hey, we just did a podcast together.
We did.
Yeah.
We did.
Where you're the host.
I am.
And I'm
And
the
it was
guest.
so fun. You are the guest. And you will be for 3 other episodes.
It's
Because
a
we're doing a
series.
4-part series. Yeah,
Yeah,
it's
a
so
4-part
fun.
series on my books.
Mhm.
Surrendered and Untamed, which is actually Untamed, the revised edition, which is what we talked about today.
Yes.
Prone to Love, we'll release later with Bryant. He'll be hosting that, I believe.
Yep.
God is Under Control, also by Bryant.
Yep.
And then our my most recent book, Leading and Finding Jesus, will be again with you.
Yes.
Yeah.
It was
Talked
a
about-
really fun time, really fun, great conversation, really deep, rich, full of life. I was crying at one point.
I was.
So it's really good, just time to really just rethinking and remembering all of God's kindness is really, and just seeing like where you've come from and knowing you now and reading the book and just being able to talk about it all. That was a lot of fun.
Yeah. This is it.
Yeah.
Untamed.
Mm-hmm.
We didn't actually talk about the bathtub, so I'm going to tell you about the bathtub real quick.
Okay.
Because this book is about discovering my promise, discovering the promise giver. There was a moment in the book and in my life where I was at the beach with my family, and I was discovering the nature of the promise giver, God, and who I am. And we were hurting the kids to get them out. They're littles. If you're at the beach is just one long trip of sand, towels, sunscreen, sweat, sleep, tired, do it over and over and over again. And we're with our cousins. We finally get them all out the door, and I'm walking out the door with all of the beach stuff, and I realize Eva, who's about 2 years old, hasn't joined us. We've lost her. She's impatient. They've all been ready, and so I realize I got to go. So I go back through the condo looking for her. I find her in the bathroom, the tub's on, and she's naked. She's gotten out of her swimsuit and everything, and she's got one foot in the tub. And I go in and I start laughing. I'm like, "What are you doing? What you doing, honey? We're going to the beach." She'd gotten impatient.
She's like, "I'm done."
She's like, "I'm done. We're going to the beach." And she said, "Take a bath, Daddy." That's what she says to me. And as soon as she says it, my Heavenly Father speaks to me, and he says, "Jason, the promises I have for you are as vast as the ocean. Don't settle for bathtubs."
It's good.
And the idea being that not all water is created equal. That there is a radical dreaming with God, a radical invitation into union and friendship and discovering who He is and discovering who we are, this faith journey that invites us into the vastness of the ocean, the measureless nature of His love, and that not all water is created equal. So that's why there's a bathtub on the front of this book. And we talked about Untamed. We talked about my journey a little bit, and it was fun.
It was fun. And guess what? Everyone gets an opportunity to do the same with you because you're going to have a book study on it.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're going to.
We'll launch this, and that'll kick off a 4-week book study. And we're doing a book giveaway. We'll figure that out here as this releases. What are the dates on the...
So your book study that if people want to sign up for, it's going to start May 28th. It's going to go 4 weeks. It's only $20, just one rate of $20 for the 4 weeks.
Yeah, there you
go. Grab a taco, come have a chat with Jason, read Untamed Love, talk about it with other people, pick his brain. It'll be a great conversation. I promise you that, as you can hear, just even with this podcast, and just being able to go in deeper and find out more about what it means to live untamed, surrendered and untamed.
Yeah. Brooke, I'm so thankful for you. I getting to know you, some of the dreams that you asked me about, I am seeing fulfilled in relationships. I'm rich in love and some of the community that's taken place. Hey guys, and by the way, Brooke is playing a huge role in focusing me in directions that are helpful, keeping the main thing, in all kinds of practical ways. Also, her through our Facebook group. a whole lot of behind the scenes stuff too, as we're talking about conferences this summer.
Yep.
I think we'll make that announcement real soon.
Right.
But conferences and book studies and all kinds of wonderful things.
It's great.
Join us on Facebook.
Yes.
We have a Facebook group, Rethinking God with Tacos. You can also follow us on Instagram, where there's lots of short reels, breakdowns from the podcast. My daughter Maddie runs that, Madeline.
She does a great job.
Yeah. You can also join our mailing list, right?
Yes. Always join the mailing list. That's where you get the up-to-date first information.
Right.
On the newsletter, in his website, afamilystory.org.
Afamilystory.org, and you can give there as well. We're listener supported and incredibly grateful.
Yeah.
When you guys give, and thankful for that. I think I've given all of the like, share, retweet, tell your mom, and
and if you're interested in doing the book group, this book study for Untamed, you can email me at info@pathtoWholeness.org and just send me an email and I'll get the information to you.
Yeah. Thanks. All right. This is our conversation. You're supposed to say it because you're hosting. So
this is our conversation on Untamed with Jason Clark and Rethinking God with Tacos. Here we go.
Go from there. I was reading through your
all my questions.
Your questions, and I got on my own preach this morning, built off of your questions. Took me down different roads that I don't know that we go today, but I had a revelatory morning, so that was fun.
Oh, that's good. Because of my questions?
Yeah, those.
Oh,
and,
no.
reading through the first chapter of Surrendered and Untamed. I'd read it a couple of days ago. I couldn't read it without crying. And then just because, there's so much, it's been years, probably since I've opened that book. And then I'm speaking this weekend at a church. I think that and the culmination of realizing that we're putting together a conference.
Yes. Yes, we are.
So all of those things.
That's what's been fun for me with reading this. Is this, okay, you wrote this book when?
I started writing that book in 2005.
Okay.
2006. So I think that re-released in 2011, which is the one you have.
Okay.
Yeah.
So why was it originally called Surrendered Untamed, and why did you change it?
Have we started?
Why not?
I love it. Hey guys, I'm here with Brooke. I love it, and I hit record because I like to do that when we first start talking. We're diving into my first book, Surrendered and Untamed, and she's holding Untamed, which I just explained was a revised edition. It has one extra chapter in it, and I was just reading through your questions, prepping for this conversation. I hadn't opened that book in a couple of years. Was crying my way through the first chapter as my father was speaking to me and reminding me of who he is and who he has been and where we are today. And so here we are. We're doing this podcast around the book, which I'm grateful to you and Bryant. We're doing a 4-part series around all 4 of the books that I've written. But you asked me why the book became Untamed.
Yeah.
And I signed with this publisher for my book, Prone to Love. And they wanted to know if I had anything else. And the folks I met with then at the time were great, amazing people. But they were quickly left the publishing house. And unfortunately, I gave them this Untamed book. I wish I hadn't at this point because I could have, there's other things I could do with it. But at the time, I released it right after, maybe 6 months to a year after Prone to Love. It originally released with Baker under Surrendered and Untamed. It was birthed from a cross season in my life. I had a band for years that died. That story's in the book.
It is.
Lots there. Those are my 20s into my early 30s, and I had a profound shift. You have those epic moments, and out of that was birthed my only solo full-length record called Surrendered and Untamed.
Hmm.
And
Which I got to listen to some of that album.
yeah,
I did. I
I'm
had my
proud of that.
kids. It was actually, I don't know when to say that I was quite surprised, but I guess it just wasn't what I was thinking, but
Right.
I loved it. It was great. You guys should
It's
listen to it.
it's U2 meets Coldplay
Yeah,
in its style,
I
which is
could see
very
that.
much
Hmm.
that Anglo-Saxon influence. I am an indie rock guy to the core. That's still when I write. If you ever go to the end of any of my books, I have a list of names of bands that I listen to, and I thank who kept me company while I write.
Okay, I don't
Most of
think I
those
ever noticed
names,
that.
yeah, most of those band names are way out there indie rock, and that was our my solo record, and birthed out of. To the extent that we live surrendered is to the
Hmm.
extent we can live untamed.
Oh, that's so good. Yeah.
My kids' names,
Hmm.
Madeline True, Ethan Wild is his middle name.
Hmm.
We
Like
gave him an
me.
E, so sophisticated it a little bit. And then my youngest Eva is Blaze. And I remember years after, while I was writing this book, realizing that the message of this book and much of my life's message was in their middle names. Because if you live true, uh, then you can live wild. To the extent
Mm-hmm.
you live surrendered is to the extent you can live untamed. And if you live true and then you live wild, you'll set the world ablaze.
Yes, that's so good. That's
Yeah,
great.
fun to
And
find that.
it is. And you have a whole chapter on that in here, which this book, honestly, I really enjoyed it. It's not quite like your other books. And one of the things that I noticed in it is it's more, your writing style is different. You're not teaching as much in this as you're writing about your life and your
Yeah,
experiences. And
yeah,
one of the things I was thinking about with that, because there was a question by Wendy. I'm just going to go ahead and ask some of
the
these
Wendy
questions.
Justice.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And she wanted to know about your writing style, the process that you go through when you write. And what I noticed, and you can answer that here in a second, but what I noticed in here is that Untamed, it appears to be a collection of what I would call kisses from God, you know, and different ways that he dropped pieces of truth into
yeah,
your heart relationally through your family, through your friends. And can you expound on that a little bit?
yeah. Well, I'll tell you, when we moved to this area, and I'll tell that story maybe a little bit later because that was the birthplace of writing and the birthplace of where we are today, our move
Hmm.
here and that first journey into trust, radical trust. But on the coming out of that, I remember I didn't want to touch anything that I didn't feel was just a yes from heaven.
Hmm.
And my brother makes documentaries and films. Him and I are working on films together now, exciting stuff. But he was on his way to Antarctica to do a documentary on a 60-day unsupported trek between with two South African
Okay.
adventurers as they went unsupported, pulling a sled to the South Pole.
Wow.
And so he's going down to film it. My daughter knows I was invited, but Karen was pregnant.
Hmm.
And he ended up getting stuck in Antarctica for 60 days. I would have missed her birth, and so it was good I didn't go. But I every once in a while I'll let Eva know, you know, I'm
If
probably
there's a
never going to get
moment.
invited to Antarctica again. Like that's how much I love you, darling. No, just kidding.
I'm sure Karen
Yeah,
was grateful though.
it didn't even cross my mind, to be honest. Well, before this book came about, he basically said, "Hey, I think you need to write a book." It birthed out of this record. He wanted to use
Hmm.
the record
Okay.
as a soundtrack for this documentary. And
That's fun.
I was sitting in the corner of my house right here, and I said, "Father, do you want me to write?" And of course, it was in me, and I felt his manifest presence just tickled him all the way down and I started laughing. My brother and wife, Karen, were like, "What?" I'm like, "Nothing." But I needed that because it took almost 5 years. Excuse me. It took almost 5 years to write that book, and it was a learning process. I say I wrote probably 5 books by the time I compiled that into one. I tend to learn by doing. I did read one book. It's a book called On Writing Well. The influence, 23 years ago, I read a book by Donald Miller called Blue Like Jazz.
It's a great book.
Great book. The content grabbed me, but mostly what arrested me was the style.
Yeah. Okay.
Because up till then, all I'd ever read was, these faith-based books were like expository preaches. They were teaching. They were more direct, and I had not the skill set, nor did I feel qualified at the time. It certainly didn't feel qualified. But Donald opened my eyes to what was possible because Donald basically wrote a memoir. It was a storytelling invitation to passively take away truths from a guy's journey. And so what's crazy is when I first started writing Surrendered and Untamed, I knew enough to know that when you start writing a book, you need to know why you're writing it. So my why was my kids.
Okay.
I was like, I'm going to write this for my kids. It's generational. It'd be nice if other people read it too, but I'm worked real hard on it. I'm going to write it for my kids. And then you have to know if you had a larger audience, who would that be? And I was praying and I thought, Father, I'd like the Donald Miller audience. I think that's my audience. And here's what's crazy. 4.5 years I'm working on that book. It ends up ultimately that my brother's trip to the South Pole. Mark Batterson, who's a friend of ours, came on and helped write a discipleship guide around this surrendered radical faith, surrendered and untamed faith. So we had a film component with Alex Harris. He was the explorer, South African explorer. My brother and myself and Mark wrote a discipleship guide, and I had the trade book, Surrendered and Untamed. And as that was signed and about to release with Baker, my brother came to me with a Donald Miller project called The Open Table. Small world. We actually had John McMurray on. McMurray is from the West Coast. He has a group called The Open Table.
Okay.
Had him on the podcast a couple of years ago. We're talking about where it came from. He's like, well, I did this project with Donald Miller. He wrote the first Open Table with Donald Miller and my brother. They filmed it. It was a discipleship guide with a film component. They both bowed out, couldn't do the second book, which they'd signed on to do. So my brother brought it to me. I wrote the second Open Table with my brother. It released before Surrendered and Untamed. So my first book doesn't have my name on the cover. My book's about to release in a month. And I picked the book up and God goes, remember when I invited you to write for the Donald Miller audience? And I was
fun.
like, oh. It's got his name on it. It's literally for the Donald Miller audience. So you want to talk about kisses from heaven for me.
Right.
All of the confirmations. As far as the style, I took a memoir approach because it's what I knew how to do. And as we progress, you'll see that memoir approach become a little more direct and prone to love. By the time I get into God is Not in Control, I've gotten better at writing, and I'm learning how to tell other people's stories as well. And I'm learning how to maybe elevate some of the takeaway aspect of it, and then leaving and finding Jesus in no way, shape, or form is academic, but is certainly the most beefy, theologically direct book that I've written. That's a lot of talking, Brooke.
No, it's good. I mean, that's what we're here to. We're discussing all of this, finding out. That was a great question, Wendy. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
Thanks for that. I want to, you talk about the promise in here, and one of the things that I really like about it is your desire for relationship over knowledge. Yeah. And there's in here, because Peter, you talk about Peter all the time.
Yeah.
Right. And like he says here that he's one of your favorite fellas, right? So can you help me understand just a little bit more here why, we'll just go with this, why Peter Why do you focus on Peter so much?
I think a few things. John's probably, even then I loved John, but I was living more of the Peter dynamic. I was a little younger and a little more brash. You know, this book has phrases like, this is a book about radical faith, and I was in a radical faith discovery, and I had more Peter stories than John stories.
Okay.
By that I mean Peter's the kid, and I talk about it. He's the kid he's doing donuts in the high school parking lot and
Right.
breaks the axle of his car. You know, he's the one that is at the quarry and is the first one up the tree to jump off the tree into the quarry 35 feet and just hits the rocks on the way down and breaks his leg, but he's still cool because he's the guy that goes first. And he's brash and bold and a little stupid and young, and so he's reckless and invincible. And I was still in my 30s and still thinking in that context. But let me tell you the story of where we were at when the book was written. I had chased out of Bible college. I had chased the promises of God, which were connected to melody and rhythm. We left Bible college. I couldn't make that suit fit, and I started a band. And the band's name was Fringe. I chuckle now when I think about it. You know, always trying to find my place within the family, the church. But my entire life was on the fringe, and so even not aware. But the band's name was Fringe. You know, one of our first songs was called Masquerade. I was addressing the school I just left.
That's fair.
I was always a little bit pushing the envelope. The first album was titled For the Vagabond Believer, which they ended up being the subtitle of Surrendered and Untamed, a field guide for the vagabond believer. That was actually the title of that book. The band died. I tell that story in the book, but it was a painful, it was probably the first epic cross season of my life where the short stories, I found myself on a bathroom floor after it had all crashed 7 years in. We'd made albums. We'd actually had one album, The Whole Dream, the $100,000 deal and record deal, and creating the album in the studio. And then it crashed. It never released. It got shelved. And
yeah, you talk about that in here.
I talk about that in the book. And I find myself on a bathroom floor crying out to God. I feel like you created me to be a hammer and you keep asking me to cut something. That was my best way to articulate. I don't understand. And that night I ultimately came, I ended up at the cross, and I basically said, my promise is yours, my gifting, my anointing, my ideas. I've been trying to make it happen for 7 years. It's all yours, and even longer than that. And out of that was the next morning I wrote a song titled Come Let's Go.
There is a road through the heart of mercy, a tree of life, the roots run deep. There is a fountain that bursts a river, its waters flooding over me.
And it's about everything being laid down at the cross. And over the course of that year, I wrote that record, Surrendered and Untamed. And I really began to discover, to the extent we live surrendered is the extent we live untamed. That was in Jackson, Mississippi. We were part of ministry, and mostly we loved the community. And so we all moved to the Charlotte area, and it was a faith move. We sold our house. We used that money. And 2 weeks into being in Charlotte, I saw the money disappearing. And I thought, okay, Father, what do we need? And I'm crying out to God in my living room. I'm on the floor, and I have this profound encounter where, honestly, I can't move. And I've had these encounters before, but I can't move. At one point, I asked him to show me what was happening, and I zoomed out of my body. I saw two angels laying on top of me. I laughed with him. I cried. I experienced his heart, his affection. That's where he told me he liked my sense of humor. we just had a beautiful time of it. I just his profound, palpable, liquid love. And on the backside of that, I sat up and I had this vision, and Jesus and I were playing cards. The night before, we'd had a couple over, our friends, and we played this game called Rook. And it's couples, and you play against each other. And this is a bit of a long story, but this is the setup
Okay, it's
for
great.
everything
Great.
else here.
I'm in tears actually over here. I don't know if you can tell, but this is really
Yeah.
great.
And the night before we'd had this. Thanks, Brooke. You're awesome. I love having these covered. This is fun for me because I haven't told these stories in a
Yeah,
long
I
time,
bet.
and so the night before we're having this party with our friends, this couple friend, beautiful, Jeremy and Catherine Cole, part of our board. Absolutely love them. We wouldn't be here without
Hmm.
them. I dedicated leaving and finding Jesus to them. Anyway, they're here. They'd moved to
Hmm.
be here with us and to navigate the season. And Jeremy's never played Rook. And in Rook, you have to bid. And
Hmm.
the highest, you have to win your bid or you lose all your points. And you better have the Rook card if you're going to shoot the moon. Essentially, if you're going to go all in,
Hmm.
you need to have the Rook card, or you need to know somehow that I have the Rook card. Well, he bid everything. He didn't have the Rook card, and I didn't have the Rook card. And so we lost horribly that hand. And when the hand was over, I looked at him and I was like, what are you doing? Why did you go all in? You didn't have the Rook and you went all in? And so that happened the night before. Now I've had having this profound encounter. Where he tells me to get up. So I'm after I can't move. I finally get up. Laughter, tears. I'm sitting at the same spot where I'd been sitting the night before. I look across where Jeremy had been sitting, and there's Jesus, and he has these Rook cards, and they're right up against his chest, and he's smiling at me, and he says, "I'm all in." He's like, "I'm all in. Are you in? Are you in?" And I looked at him and I thought, I guess he knows how to play this game. I hope he knows how to play it better than Jeremy does. So I said, "Yeah, I'm all in." He said, "All right, stay the course, not to the left, not to the right. Stay the course. Get up and write this down." And so I got up and I wrote some. I found a Dr. Pepper box and I wrote on the back of it several things he gave me. This is where I'll race through the next year. The next year, I basically what I felt he invited me into was to give to the ministry, to go raise my support, and not a day late or a day early, he said, regarding
Hmm.
my finances. I learned over that next year that his idea of late is
And early
radically different
differently than ours.
than my idea of late.
Right.
But he was dealing with some great insecurities in me.
Hmm.
And so over the course of that year, I served that ministry, and we watched our bank account completely evaporate
Hmm.
to the point where I stopped sharing with people what we were doing because they were all concerned. My folks, everyone, Karen was in, but I stopped sharing with people what we were doing because they actually saw me as possibly lazy. I had pastors, throw that scripture, "A man who can't provide for his family is worse than an infidel,"
Hmm.
which was the exact opposite. Infidel is an unbeliever.
Hmm.
Everything I was doing was trying to figure out who he is. And so I remember one time a great insecurity. I was driving by Home Depot and we didn't have much money. And I said, "That's it. I'm going in and getting a job." And the presence of God filled the car, and I heard him say, "Don't strike the rock."
That was one of my, honestly, I loved that
Yeah.
chapter in here. I sent pictures of it to Daniel.
Yeah.
Like, you need to read this.
I know the story, the journey you guys are in too. And I wept in the car. I was upset. I was like, "Well, how am I, what, he was saying, I've invited you in, not a day late, stay the course." These are two things I wrote down: stay the course, not a day late, not a day early. Long story. I mean, I was shop vacuuming in the house with our shop vac because our vacuum broke. Like, things were breaking. We were selling everything that wasn't nailed down, and I had one pair of jeans, just the kind of stuff,
Yeah,
and
it's
and
real.
the real stuff.
Real, yeah.
And my dad had brought me this business plan, and at that point in time, had this calling on my life, and I was an artist and all those things. I'm wrestling with all these insecurities. He brought me this idea of a business plan that would partner with what he was doing. And 6 months in, I was like, no, that's to the left. Or to the right. And so God invited me into the heart of a delusion to set me free is what he was doing. And I needed to rediscover who he was truly and who I was. And, but a year in, I remember it was a Friday, and my dad asked how we were doing, and I used the language of, we can see the whites of the giant's eyes. I had the epiphany that when David's down on the field, it's too late now. There's no going back.
Right.
We're here. And,
You're in it.
You're in it. We've lived in, and so that means that on Monday they were going to turn off our water, on Tuesday our gas, and on Thursday our electric. And we'd had one asset. We had a truck that I'd bought, and we'd been trying to sell it for months, and had gotten one really low ball offer at the beginning and said no to it, and had lowered it down to where it was a steal, but no calls. So it's a Friday night. Karen sends me to the grocery store to get some ketchup, and I remember hoping that there was enough room on our credit card for ketchup. And at this point, my prayer sounds like this: I'll do anything that you want from me, Father. I'll clean toilets. I don't care. But I'm not moving to the left or the right. I need your favor. I won't go anywhere that you won't bless. I need to hear from you. I need to know what you want, what's on your heart. And I'm praying that, and I have this idea. And I can't tell you how excited I got about this idea, but it was an idea for my dad's business. And you have to understand, that kind of business in the past would have killed me. The idea that I would do something in construction ever again was death to me. That was the thing I was running from. This, and all of a sudden, I am so excited about this idea. I call my dad in the grocery store and say, "What about?" And he was like, "I don't know, it might work." And I called my wife and I said, "What? I think I got this." And she said, "I don't know, babe, and I said, "Okay." I said, "Father, if this is you, I'll do it. I'll get all in." And I was so excited. I got home and I was like, "Show me how to do it." And woke up to a phone call from someone from the coast. "Hey, you got the truck?" "Yep." He drove around the block, gave me the money. I took that money as a yes from God. I invested it in what I realized was a business plan. I didn't even know enough to realize it was a business plan, but I invested it in this idea. Jeremy, my friend, came on board with me, and we partnered in this idea, invested. I put out all the fires first, invested in that idea. We doubled our money that first month. We doubled every month on the rest of that year, and had 500,000 in sales by the end of the year.
It's amazing.
And so I'm in the middle of this huge breakthrough, this radical surrender. Now I'm getting to live this untamed reality. The album is there. I'm on the other side of this experience where I'm just overwhelmed, and that's when I began to write this book. This book came out of that journey of all of the things that I had learned from the death of the band through to this season here. This radical faith that looked like obedience, but really was the discovery of relationship.
Yeah. And one of the things with that I appreciate so much is there's such a, I don't even know what to call it, but I mean, you've heard me talk about this before, about the Bible being placed in this area in our lives, or being placed higher than the Trinity in some way, or even replacing a part of the Trinity, right?
Yeah.
So I think about that. Yes. Okay. It's needed 100%. I don't want to make it sound like it's not needed, but the things that you just talked about, it's like you just definitely described your relationship with the Father, with Jesus, and with Holy Spirit in it. And you talked about how you experienced their love for you. You experienced and walked through real life situations, hard things, and walking through that, and them showing you who they are in it, in the midst of it. That's why I'm in tears. I'm like, you can read that in the Bible. You can read it, and it's other people's lives and stuff, but it's a whole nother ball game
Come on.
when you're sitting there and experiencing it yourself.
Yeah.
And it's like, here, I wrote this book about myself. Take it and go read it, and we could be friends later. I don't know. I mean, it's the relationship. I don't like, again,
Yeah.
I'm not trying to knock the Bible. Please don't
No,
hear
no, I know
that.
what you're saying. No, no.
But
I know.
everything that you're saying here, I mean, that's
Yeah.
like, yeah.
Well, the funny thing is we have this phrase in that season where I would say scary is fun. My wife added sometimes
Sometimes, yeah, that's fair.
into the season. But I remember I've always had a relationship, right? So that's always been a relational piece. But this was all the setup to union. This was all an
Yes.
invitation. He was dealing with some really fractured
Yes.
insecurities in me to bring me to a place where we actually could discover the finished work of the cross. So this was the precursor to that. But I was always fascinated by intimacy, always fascinated. I told my wife years ago, we had a laugh because I made some comment off the cuff. Someone made a wish over a birthday cake they blew it, and she said, well, "What'd you wish for?" And the child told her, and I said, I before the child told her, I said, "Oh, it's the same thing we all wish for." And she's like, "Well, what do we all wish for?"
What do we all, yeah.
And I said, "A greater revelation of His presence."
Oh,
And she
that's
looked at me
good.
and she's like, "We don't all wish for that." So it was laughing
Oh my
because
gosh, I love
for
her so
years and
much.
years and years, I would see a shooting star and I'd say, "I just want more of you." I'd always been mesmerized by Solomon. So some of it was Solomon asked, he was offered all these things and he said, I want a greater revelation of your presence. That's how I interpreted it. But I was mesmerized by a story Graham Cook told for years, where he tells a story about early in his 30s with a young family, and they're trusting God on the call, chasing God down, and they're all sitting at the table, no food, and he has his son pray to bless the food, and his son looks at him like, "Okay, Dad." He says, "Just go ahead and bless it." And I'd heard this story, and his son's, "Thank you, Father, for this food, amen." At the end of the amen, there's a knock on the door. And they all get up, they go to the door, and it's their neighbor with a casserole. And she says, "I don't know if I'm too late. You probably already have dinner plans, but my son just stopped by to surprise me, and he's gonna take me out for dinner. Could you guys use this?"
Yeah,
Of course, you get chills when you hear the
right.
story because it's the son's eyes, the faith element of what's taking place here, and I was mesmerized by stories like this. Then when we went through that season, I had the epiphany, and the humor wasn't lost on me. But I'm like, oh, to have that story, you have to sit at a table where there's no food.
Yes, 100%.
You have to
100%.
be,
Yes.
you actually have to follow him onto the field and see the whites of the giant's eyes before you
Yes.
get to sling the sling.
Before you can have the story.
Before you get the story,
you
yeah.
refer to that in here quite a bit. But I wanna ask about this. So, I'm trying to decide which way to go because they're tied together a little bit about fear being known, right? Like people have a fear of being known, but then people have a desire to be known, right? Like
Yeah.
we long to be known, but then
Yeah.
what is it that would you say? Because here on page, I guess it doesn't really matter to the people, but page 68,
Yeah.
it says here, "I spent the first 20 years of my life learning about my unique promise, and the last 20 years learning how to surrender the same promise. I'm learning the extent to which I possess my promise is directly linked to the measure of my surrender. Strangely, to truly participate in my promise now, I must surrender it and discover absolute dependence in the promise giver. And that's where the wilderness comes into play." And then it goes on, it says, "It's the wilderness that prepares our hearts. In the wilderness, we learn to surrender our understanding of the promise. And in this surrender, we begin to see our promise through our Father's eyes. This is absolutely essential if we want to fully embrace our promise." And to me, that's about being known, and that's about relationship.
Yeah.
So with that idea, how would you define surrender now?
Yeah. Man.
Just curious.
Yeah. This is what I was telling you before I hit record. I think that I started processing through the book and some of your questions, and then ended up revelating how would I define surrender now? As I would define it as friendship. And I think I would have always defined it that way if I just didn't have the language yet. A lot of this book is about obedience, radical obedience. There's a section in the book where I'm working in Jackson, Mississippi, outside in construction, in the 95 degree heat and 90% humidity and in the sun. And I've had this epiphany. I'll share it because it's about realism, and optimism, and I'll come back around. I think I will. If I don't,
I'll bring you back.
But some of the shifts after that time on the floor were that I realized I'd become a saved unbeliever. By that, I would have described a glass. To protect my heart from disappointment, I would see a glass and go, I know I can't call it half empty because that's unbelief. And I've grown up in the church, so that's illegal.
Yeah.
So I came up with, that realist. I'm a realist. It's halfway. Let's just call it what it is.
It's halfway.
And through friendships and challenges and encounters with God, I came to the epiphany one day that there could be a drop in the glass, but my Father sees it as overflowing. That He's invited me into, if you can call it optimism, but it's the faith of I don't know, but He's good, and everything He has is mine. So it was the precursor of that began to invite me into where were we going? Surrender. And this invitation into friendship that's where I was at. That led to, at the time, I would say this book is about radical obedience. And that's where I began to revelate today, because I realized I have a phrase I say often on the podcast: was Jesus the most obedient person that walked the planet, or did He only do what was in His Father's heart? And the answer, of course, is yes. And I've been expounding on that and writing on that. And I was realizing again as I was thumbing through this book yesterday and today that this journey started with this radical yes to whatever you've invited me to, and that obedience is in the context of friendship, which has always been how I've navigated. In the context of friendship is just the opportunity to discover how He thinks, moves, and has His being.
Yes.
And so I remember asking Him in that sweaty sun working outside, there's got to be a belief switch. And He said to me, yeah, it's obey. And you're doing good, son. I love you, proud of you. And I thought, obey. And so obedience became, for me, the foundational pursuit in the context of relationship. And so it became the way by which to discover how He thinks, moves, and has His being. I actually look at obedience and say, if you have a child, my kids, my second last chapter in the last book was about friendship and obedience, and the fact that I've raised all my kids to be best friends, even when they were babies. So in the context of that friendship, in the context of relationship, obedience is often their opportunity and my opportunity to steward my faithfulness to them, and their opportunity to steward their obedience to me, to discover how I think, move, and have my being until they mature. And they don't actually think about interacting with that in the context of obedience anymore. Out of friendship and out of a sense of connection and union, they're just doing the things that are naturally on their heart to do. And so surrender at the time was, how do I live the most surrendered life? Because I'm convinced that in that is the ability to chase down everything He's put on my heart to do. I can live untamed, and I want to live untamed as an artist, as an authentic human being. What does it look like to live untamed? What looks like this absolute surrender. And as we've navigated these 20 plus years, I would redefine surrender as a friendship.
Yeah.
This mutual, other-centered, self-giving connection.
I think that's great.
Here will I sing. Oh, oh, oh.
Hey guys, interrupting for a second. Glad you're here. So thankful for this podcast. Thankful to get to do this with friends. Thankful for Derek and all of those who've navigated it with us. Listen, this podcast is done under our nonprofit, A Family Story. 12 years ago, I had a vision and I wrote it down. I'm going to read it to you. Family Story is a relational community of creatives, family and friends. I see all of us as creatives. We do life together. We envision and express God's love through our gifting and grace. We are worshipers, dreamers, storytellers, and preachers, a family of dads and moms, brothers and sisters, daughters and sons, united by a passion to know and reveal God's perfect love. I feel like I'm seeing the fulfillment of some of that vision 12 years ago. The mandate on A Family Story was to create media content catalytic for an encounter with the love of God. afamilystory.org is our website. I encourage you to go there. There's a whole lot of media content there. There's books and articles. There's films, some music, and this podcast. That's the home of Rethinking God with Tacos, which is pretty dang cool. It's been life-giving, as I said, the community around it, the community of creatives, of family and friends that's growing. It's blown me away. And so I'm thankful. I'm thankful for all the relationships, connections, and I'm thankful for all those who've given. Rethinking God with Tacos is listener-supported. If you'd like to support us, you can go to afamilystory.org. Again, we're a nonprofit. And I would encourage you to join us on our Facebook group. Follow us on Instagram, all the socials. If you're curious how to find me on the socials, it's at Jason Clark is. Otherwise, like, share, write a review on iTunes or Spotify. Tell your mom. We really are loving doing this, and I'm so thankful for everyone here. All right, it's time to get back to the podcast.
Yeah, and your life, and just even on the podcast, and even in the Facebook group, and all the different ways I've seen you interact with people, you operate from a very humble place.
Thanks.
You do. You operate from a very humble place, and you definitely are putting the other person, I don't want to say before you, in a way of like, I don't know. I don't even know how that could be misunderstood, but like you're definitely thinking about the other person and where they're at in their journey. There is a lot of grace on you, a lot of grace, and it's awesome. And just even in all of this, in this book, like, because it's fun for me reading this book and knowing you now. And I'm like, oh, I wonder if that's what was going on here. Oh, I wonder if that's the job that he was talking about. Oh, or is this rethinking? I don't know. It's kind of fun. And also reading your books and seeing the difference in your writing style. Because, my favorite book that you've written is Leaving and Finding Jesus, which I'll get to do also with you in the last one. Yeah. So, but in there was a lot of ways you had to surrender dreams, your ideas, whether it was from circumstances, things that you can't control, or it was in your control. Yeah. But this book, being about 10 years old or so, what are your thoughts about that? Yeah. Like, have you had any of those dreams come back to life? Do you want any of them to? I don't know. And or are you glad that they didn't?
You asked, there's another thing so I'll answer that by this other, there's another question you had here. What new ways are you saying yes to that cause discomfort? It's like, I am uncomfortable all the time. I'm more uncomfortable now than
Yeah, I'm sure.
You know a little bit about, the song, and I was thinking about today from Surrendered and Untamed. Is my favorite song. Is called Dreams, Visions, and Revelation. 22-year-old song that holds up. There's a few tweaks I'd make lyrically, but minor. I saw the Walking Bones. I saw the Veil Been Torn, and you were there. I mean,
I saw the burning bush. I went to take a look, and I
visions and revelation, you know that I've explored old men dream dreams. We've talked about that before. You know, the fact that the reason that old men dream dreams is that they know what it cost.
Yeah.
They've lived through failed visions. They've lived through disappointments and death, and the impact of hell on this earth, the lie of separation. And then they dream again in the authority of both their understanding of the cost and the generational way that they will now approach all things. And so I think we are seeing some of those promises of God. I love the story of the farmer at 90 who plowed under a field of grape that was producing because he found this new grape that he wanted to plant, but it wouldn't produce a crop that would make wine for 30 plus years. He's in his 90s. That story arrests me because that story is an invitation into how old men dream, old women dream, this generational approach. So I don't know that I'll see the fullness of it. I'll bring it full circle with Peter and a moment in this book, because this book is an identity book. It's me chasing down the promise giver, realizing that I had put a lot of my focus on who I am and what I'm designed to do, and I'm an artist. And I mean, honestly, Brooke, my most natural skill set is rhythm, melody, and harmony. That is where I'm most naturally gifted. And for some reason, that I can see it in my kids, but I've really moved generationally in how I even approach that.
Well, I'm going to interrupt there for a second. You can see that in your writing, though.
Sure, yeah.
You know, so it doesn't, I guess I wonder if maybe it doesn't necessarily have to be music oriented, right?
Yeah.
Because you can see it in your writing, and you can see it in the way you tell stories, because you're an excellent storyteller. I mean, I could listen to you all the time and tell stories. So you talk about, that was a lot to say, but no, I'll sit here all day and let you talk, you know? Because just the way you tell stories is very captivating. It is. So just to speak to that for a moment, the rhythm, all of that, it happens in your stories too.
Yeah, thank you. That's a high compliment. I do look at writing as more art than information. So for me, whatever I am, I'm a 4 on the Enneagram, right?
Yes, so that's my unprofessional opinion.
So that fits the mold. But Peter, I tell 2 stories. I know I'm telling stories. Have I ever told you about, I was out for a run years ago. I may have just told the story. You may have heard it, but I'm going to tell it again. I don't know if I've told it on the podcast or not. But it encapsulates this journey and really the takeaway from the message, more specific to hope. But I'm out for a run. I'd heard a message from Bill Johnson about hope, and I think this will be for encourage folks too. And he described hope, biblical hope, as kids running down the hallway on Christmas morning. Palpable. You can feel it, right? You know it. It's that the expectancy of something good. And so I've been hearing him talk about it, and we're on the on another season years after this book's come out. I've probably already written, or I'm writing Prone to Love, but I go out for a run one day, and he says, Jason, I want you to feel hope today. And I went, oh yeah, Father, yeah, by faith, I choose to feel hope. And he went, that's not what I asked, son. He said, I want you to feel it like those kids on Christmas morning. And I was like, what? Yeah, God, okay. I don't know how to do that. By faith. And I kept running. And I kind of let it go. I was like, I don't know how you make yourself feel something. A few days later, I walk out the door to go for a run. He says, Jason, I want you to feel hope today. And I said, by faith, I feel hope today. And he said, that's not what I asked, son. I want you to feel it like those kids on Christmas morning. I got frustrated. Okay, I just moved on. Third time, a few days later, I go out. I'm just warming up. I'm just down the road from my house. Jason, I want you to feel hope today, like those kids on By Faith. No, I want you to feel hope today. And I snapped back at him. I said, God, every time I come down the hallway, it's socks.
Mm-hmm.
It's underwear and socks.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm tired of it. I'm a mature man, and I can say thank you for the socks all day long. I understand gratefulness, and I get it that socks are important, but I'm freaking tired of running down the hallway for socks.
Mm-hmm.
Basically, I just said I am disappointed, and I'm disappointed in you. I'm disappointed in the fact that I don't have my promise. I'm disappointed in
Yeah.
And he interrupts me, and he says, son, do you know how you feel hope? I'm like, no, tell me how I feel hope. And he said, you don't come down the hallway for the presents.
Mm-hmm.
You come down the hallway because I'm at the end of the hallway. And you come down the hallway to climb in my lap. It's always been about me. And I'm washed with hope then.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my goodness, I'm overwhelmed with hope. Once again, reminding me that it's always been a relational dynamic. Yeah. It's always been. And so good. Peter, he says to Peter, he says, and I write about this in Surrendered and Untamed, he says, Peter, who do you say that I am?
Mm-hmm.
And Peter responds, he says, you're the Christ, the Son of the living God. Peter, love Peter. First, he asked the disciples, Peter says it first, because Peter's going to say it first. And he got this one right. You know, one time he wanted to build a fort, got that one wrong, but he's going to get it right too. Yes. And he just said, you're the Christ, the Son of the living God. And Jesus says, Peter, you didn't get that from a book.
No.
Not even the good book. No. It might be in there, but you didn't get it from the book.
Mm-hmm.
Peter, you didn't get that from a teacher, not even the best teacher. You might have teachers teaching it, but you didn't get it from a teacher.
Yeah,
Peter, you got that from my Father. Mm-hmm. My Father revealed that to you, Peter. Peter, this is what happened. I said, look at me. Who am I? You looked at me, and my Father spoke to you. You had an encounter with my Father. So this is what happens. Jesus is here to reveal the Father.
It's good.
So he says, you just met my Father. And now, Peter, I'm going to tell you who you are. So you look at me, you come down the hallway, you see me, you see the Father. Now I'm going to tell you who you are. And this is where he says, you're the rock, and upon this rock I'll build my church. He's saying, you've discovered union. You've discovered in this relational dynamic. When you see me, you've seen the Father. When you encounter the Father, Jesus said, I pray that you would be one, just as we are one, just as I'm in the Father and the Father's in me. This is in John 17. He's praying this over his disciples, that they would know that same union with the Father and with each other. And if and when you come into this union, the whole world will know. So upon this rock, this union, this revelation, I'll build my church, and the gates of hell will not prevail. A yes on earth will be a yes in heaven, a no on earth is a no in heaven. Basically, you are going to have the authority out of this union, out of this foundation, this rock, this cornerstone, cruciform love. Greater love is this, that there's no greater love that a man would lay his life down for his friend. You've just discovered this, Peter. You've looked at me, you've encountered the Father, and now I can tell you who you are. That was what I was discovering in Surrendered and Untamed. It was my Father at the end of the hallway. He's always been a good promise giver. It's not about the promise. It's about finding his lap. It's about trusting that he's good. It's about climbing into it. It's about obeying in the relational context. It's about the Passion version says, Jesus is talking to his disciples. He said, I never called you servants.
Yeah. It's good.
I always have called you most beloved friends, because a servant doesn't know what's in the heart of the master.
Going on, yeah.
But a friend, I tell everything the Father has revealed to me. This is what's taking place. Peter is stepping outside of this transactional, running down the hallway for the promise, for the gift, for the title, for the dream or the vision, and instead thinking relationally, discovering the lap of the Father. And in that, then, the foundational revelation of who I am, of who you are. And And so that was what I was chasing down in this book, this discovery of who I am in the fractured delusion of separation that is woven through the church that I'd grown up within. And so you'll also find a whole lot of my wrestling match with the church throughout this book.
Yeah.
A whole lot of me poking at any transactional way by which the church navigates.
Mindsets, all of it, yeah.
A whole lot of me on the fringe, trying to articulate these great insecurities that I had as a vagabond believer, trying to navigate faith in a world, in a religious world of certainties. Still hidden, still unseen, still devalued. I'm the part of the revelating I was doing today was realizing that when you have separation in your understanding of who God is, you'll have separation in how you do church, and the institutional model of church is built on this Father who looks away. And so I think every one of us has experienced one of three things. I think all of us have experienced one of three things in the church at some point. Dismissal, you're just a kid, a woman, a children's worker, a businessman.
Yeah.
You're not the this, that, the prophet, the teacher. You don't have the degree, you aren't, they don't have the title. We haven't given you the platform. And so you've been dismissed or you've been rejected.
Yeah.
Maybe you actually are saying some things that are making their way through. And so now you have to be rejected. So you're othered, you're kicked out. You're the heretic, the slippery slope, the charlatan, the huckster, or we're going to count your sins against you. We're going to go find. So dismissal, rejection, or, and this one I've experienced as well, prostitution. That's a strong word, but that's where your gifts and anointings are leveraged and used, and you're handcuffed and you're gaslit. These are the things that I think all of us, these traumas we've all experienced while we're endeavoring to discover the friendship of God, often being taught from the pulpit by servants, right? Servants who don't know the heart of the master. They don't know. They don't know what God's. They tell us what God's like, but He only actually reveals what He's like to His friends. And so, a lot of this book is me navigating dismissal, rejection, and prostitution. It's a strong word, but because I am a gifted songwriter and singer and worship leader, pastors love to bring me in, and within weeks handcuff me. Yeah. And so a lot of this book is me discovering my faith in the lap of my Father, while still poking and learning how to articulate some of these fractured, othering realities of a church still lost in a theology of separation, and ultimately leading to Prone to Love and the stories I tell often on this podcast about my second salvation. And
yeah, with that too, I was wondering, is this book, or even like through the process of the book, is that where you actually started to begin like rethinking God?
Yeah, I think we're always rethinking. I was rethinking God in Bible college.
Right.
I was rethinking, I just didn't have the language, or I certainly didn't have the permission. Back then I was dismissed. I would say my late 30s, 20s and 30s, I was prostituted. And then in the last years, I've been rejected.
Yeah.
But I don't need to go back around to that corner. But yeah, I think we've been rethinking, and all of that is even the story I told where I didn't go get a job, not to the left or the right, and I just served that ministry for the first year right into that new company and that breakthrough. I mean, that was a very Emmaus Road journey. I look back on that and go, that's not something I would encourage someone to do. You have to hear in a relational context, God. To me, I look back at that journey and I go, that was God coming to me and saying, all right, you believe in child sacrifice? All right. You believe I'm good? All right. Follow me into the heart of this delusion so I can set you free.
That's good.
You believe that doing construction is the death of all things? Do you believe that I can't provide for you outside of you doing something that you feel you hate? You
Hmm.
believe this? Okay. Don't go get a job. Follow me. I'll follow me into the heart of this delusion
Hmm.
and it's traumatic, and you find yourself anxious, and
Hmm.
you can't explain it to anyone. And I look back at that now and go, he was gracious to invite me into and I was convinced enough in his goodness to follow him into the heart of a delusion so I could get set free from that delusion. We ended up running that company for 5 years. I had so much fun. I mean, every day I woke up whistling while I was working.
That's awesome.
It was a beautiful thing. And then we lost that company. That's the story where I've told the story where God went silent for 2 years, again, inviting me into the next heart of my delusion, went silent for 2 years. I've told that story many times. I'm sure I'll tell it in one of the other books, where he invited me and we lost the company, the one that he
Hmm.
gave us. But I'll tell you the difference between those two journeys. The first one, great desperation and anxiety
Right.
in the middle of lack.
Hmm.
The second time we experienced even more lack and no desperation or anxiety.
Right.
So,
It,
you keep growing and discovering who he is.
it makes me think of a time when my oldest daughter, she's just turned 29 on Monday. And
29.
yeah, I
You're
know.
not old enough to have a
I have a
29.
29-year-old. But we were at a park. Oh my gosh. I think she was probably 6 or 7 or 8. I hope she was at least that old and not younger.
Yeah.
But still, I probably would have done the same thing. And those kind of like metal, like rainbows that they could be monkey bars, and you crawl, you can crawl on them, pull on them, walk on all the things, right? She was terrified to do it. She was terrified she was going to
Right.
fall, all of
Right.
these things. I'm like, no, you're going to be fine. And
Yeah.
I was literally like, not really pushing her into it.
Right.
She probably would think I was very mean about it and that I was like just making her do it, right? But I think about that in a way of, it's like, no, I'm going to catch you if you're going to fall.
Yeah.
I'm right here.
Yeah.
You can do this.
Yeah.
And so I think about what you're saying in the relational context, right? With
Yeah.
my own kid. And how many times do we do that? We're terrified. She was crying. She was
Right.
crying and like, I can't do this as she's doing it. And I'm like, I've been there.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Jesus,
Yeah.
I can't do this. Father God, I don't want to.
Yeah.
No, I don't
Yeah.
want to. And I'm crying and I don't
Yeah.
want to do it, but I'm doing it.
Yeah.
Like there have been seasons in my life where he's always shown me a few steps ahead, has
Yeah.
always done that. But recently, in the last, I would say 5 years, I can no longer see steps ahead. I don't even see the stone underneath my foot and me placing the rock, right? So
Yeah.
I know, but I know he's good.
Yeah.
And I know every time I step my foot out and I'm a step on a rock. I can't
Yeah.
see it.
Yeah.
I can't see it at all.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I know it's there because he's the one leading me. So that's kind of what it makes me think of a
I
little
love
bit.
that Indiana Jones in The Last Crusade where,
Yes.
where he's just taking steps.
Yeah, and then you turn sideways. It's all about
Yeah, you could-
perspective, right?
Yeah. It's all perspective.
It's all perspective. I want this. Can we just start with the side perspective and let me see the bridge before? No, because then where's the mystery in it, right? We
Yeah.
have to be okay with the mystery of God
Yes.
and the wonder. And I think
Yes.
because of so many, I mean, society has changed so many different ways. And I think the more that we have fear and control, the more that we lose this idea of the mystery and the wonder because we rely too much on knowledge.
Yeah.
We rely too much on knowledge.
Yeah.
But honestly, I can know everything and know nothing.
Yeah.
The older
Yeah.
I get, the less I realize I even know.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's good. And that's that. Well, I tell a story about Maddie jumping off a diving board, and
Yeah, in the book.
which
Yeah,
is very
it's great.
similar, and just the trust. It's really comes down to trust. Everything comes down to trust, and so it's why even in those days the forming of I don't know, but he's good was happening.
Yeah.
That I will not be moved from faith, the faith that he's good, that because that's where trust is.
Well, yeah. But I mean, even in that, there's a choice to believe it. You can
Yeah.
either believe that he's good
Yeah.
or believe that he's not.
Yeah.
I mean, we still have our choice in that, right? And
Yeah.
so I'm going to believe that he is, and I'm going to move in the way that he is good, because I think that's going to be a lot more fruitful than if I choose to believe that he's not.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's
Yeah.
like, regardless,
Yeah.
it's, yeah, there's still a
Yeah.
choice in that. And
Yeah.
even if it's hard to you and you don't believe it,
Yeah.
still make the choice to operate in that until
Yes.
it becomes truth. That's, I don't know. I could
It's
talk about that for a while,
it's the
but
long game.
hmm
It's the long game. It's funny because the further I get from this book, I have folks come to me, typically younger, and they're, pulling radical triggers, and
hmm
if there's anything, I'm like, look, make sure you heard from him, um, because I used to define faith as, an act.
hmm
But that'd be like saying jumping out of an airplane is an act of faith. And I'm like, no, it's called
which you
stupid.
talk about your skydiving
I do.
there.
Yeah. Yeah. That's one of my favorite
It's
stories,
a
but,
great story.
jumping out of an airplane
Hmm
the faith is on what you have on your back.
Right.
If you have a rock on your back, then you're just an idiot. It's about a parachute, and
hmm
you need to know it's got you, because
hmm
that's actually what faith is. It's in what you're actually navigating. If otherwise you jump out of an airplane, you're just going to break. And that's the Peter in me that's broken enough legs to go, hey, like, that's unnecessary. But it's the long game.
hmm
What's been fun for me is, we have a phrase, love is the long game. And
Right.
so for me, this book is, it released in 2011, but this book is really 20 years old, because I started writing in 2004, 2005, and it's about the years before that. So for me, I'm looking at 20 years, and
Right.
I'm going, the long game of love. That's why I was emotional reading it the other day, because I saw the long game of love. Even in, there's a section in the book where I talk about 13-year-old unmarried favor.
hmm
Mary was favored by God,
hmm
and it looked like being pregnant out of wedlock at 13.
Right.
And our idea of favor,
hmm
I've been praying for favor for 20 years. Jesus grew in wisdom and favor with God and with man. The God part I actually understand, because it'd be like if you handed me my baby and put her in my arms, Maddie, and put her in my arms. I didn't look at her and say, you can have some of my favor now, and we'll see how this goes.
hmm
You have all my favor. You're just going to grow in a revelation of it. You're going to mature and discover everything I have is yours. As you grow and mature, you'll discover more and more of my favor. So he grew in favor with God. I get that part. The favor with man was the part where I feel like a whole lot of my life has been 13-year-old unmarried favor.
mm
You know what I
hmm
mean?
Yes.
Like Jason, you're chasing something down. You're birthing something beautiful, but everybody else is scorning you for it.
hmm
It's the long game of love, to appreciate that Mary was favored, highly favored by God, and it looked
Yes.
like birthing, the 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 resurrected Christ, the
Right.
birthing Jesus in the middle, in what looked like, even, that it had been inappropriate, or that, she had to
Right.
live in the stigma
According
of,
to society, it wasn't correct or it
yeah,
wasn't right, and this is
yeah.
wrong, and you should be
Everybody's
shamed for
whispering
it.
behind there. Everybody's
Yeah.
calling her a heretic. You know what I mean? All the
hmm
things that she's getting. That's favor. That was
Yeah.
the favor of God.
And we want that.
And I'm praying for it. And so it's the
Right.
long game of love to appreciate what the favor of God looked like. It birthed the salvation of all creation,
Mm, that's
the
good.
favor of God. Anyway,
Yeah, this has been a really fun conversation, and we're coming over an
yep,
hour now, and so
yep.
we have to talk about tacos still, though.
That's right, because this is still rethinking God with
This is
talk.
still rethinking God with tacos, and so I I you know I have to share with you my experience of, I don't even know if I say it right. Is it Birria? Is that how it's
Uh,
pronounced?
Buria, I
It's
think.
Birria.
Buria, I think.
I
Yes,
always
the
want to
one with
roll
the
the
dip
R,
drippings,
right?
the one with the meat drippings.
Yes.
Yes,
So I'm,
Buria, maybe. Go ahead.
yeah, I had a hard time with that. And
You
I
didn't
had
like
a
it?
hard, no, I did, but I
Oh,
had a hard time with the idea of it because I didn't understand a soggy taco. And nobody really wants a soggy taco. I'm just saying, okay? And till someone explained it to me like it was like French dip.
Yes.
And I was like, okay, I can get behind that.
Yeah.
So while I was in Tennessee, I was
And you were
picking up
hanging out
with Anna.
Yeah.
She's a fellow Taconian, right? Is that what we call ourselves? I don't know.
so that's
And she took me to a pretty authentic place to try it, and it was so good.
right.
So that would be my most recent love for this. I'm like, okay. And it was a queso one, so there was cheese in the middle of it. And I do keto, so I'm all about all the fat and all the cheese and all the meat. And I'm like, give me more of that. I can do that.
Yeah.
What about you? What's been your most recent,
Yeah, I'll stay. Well,
adventure in tacos?
I'll stay on the subject because we went Hope for Life.
Okay.
Lockie and Giovanna. We had them on the podcast. They're down in Miami.
Okay.
Beautiful, beautiful ministry. Amazing people. And we went down there to speak at the church, and that was the first time we went out. They took us out for actually Giselle, Gigi, someone who's amazing, took us out that day. And a couple others took us out, Karen and I, for tacos.
Fun.
And Karen ordered it. She didn't know what it was. She thought that looks interesting, and she ordered the birria, I think, taco, and we all envied her. So we all took bites of her taco. It was beyond magical, and so that would be my. And so since then, there's a spot down the road where I get them.
Is it the same place that we went to?
No, and I Midwood Smokehouse. They're actually a barbecue joint.
And a barbecue joint. Okay. Well, that makes sense.
But they do these birria tacos that, oh my goodness.
Okay. Did you know originally it's actually with goat or lamb, not roast beef?
I mean, I'd be game.
I know.
I would do it. Yeah, the best goat story I have, I was in Haiti with my brother, and my brother's, done everything, gone everywhere, and we're at this is my brother, he's clueless, and we're in the pool at the hotel, and I'm like, man, a lot of rats here, huh? And he's like, no, I've never seen a rat, and he's been there 4 or 5 times, and I'm like, you've never seen a rat? He's like, never seen a rat, dude. And I'm like, I point at the one walking the wall. I'm like, you've never seen a rat. I point at that. And he turns and goes, oh my goodness. And then I go, you've never seen a rat. And I point at the one at the corner. He's like, oh my goodness. And I go, you've never seen a rat.
Wow.
And like there were 4 rats within eye line. And he starts, we're crying, laughing, because that's my brother.
Those are the best moments.
He's just going. And so he's crying, laughing. And then we go out to eat that night to his favorite restaurant. And we order goat. It wasn't very good. But as we're finishing the goat, he goes, man, last time I was here, I got food poisoning. Horribly. It was the worst thing I've ever experienced in my life. And then he starts thinking.
You've never seen a rat.
He looks at me and he's like, actually, I ate here. And then he was serious. I was like, good Lord, man. So that's my goat story. I didn't get food poisoning, but
that's good.
But hey, I like that as a guest, you're the one that directed us toward tacos. Now I know what it feels like when someone shuts the conversation down and moves us towards tacos. But this is fun.
I think that this is going to be an exciting series, and this was really fun to do. And we are going to give away this book, Untamed, and we're going to do a book study on Untamed, where people will have an opportunity to sign up, and we have dates.
We'll put all that information out, and we don't have a title for the series. We're just going to have a podcast about each of my books. You're hosting a couple of them, this one and one other, and then Bryant Spratlin is hosting the other 2.
Yeah.
A little bit self-indulgent, but I'm enjoying it.
It's fun. I think it's been really fun. And so if you're interested in doing that book group and you want more information, it's going to be $20 per person. And you can just email me at info@pathtoWholeness.org, because I'll be facilitating all of that. So if anyone has any questions, and you get to have time with Jason, and each week for these 4 weeks, good to go through this book together with him, pick his brain, do all the things, regarding this book, and asking him all kinds of questions. And I know people love that and be able to have that opportunity. So I think that's great. It's going to be a lot of fun.
Yeah, I think so too. And this is fun, Brooke. I'm enjoying doing this with you.
This is real fun. Yeah. Thanks for letting me do this, and thanks for coming on here on your own show and talk about your book
That's good.
and just partake in this 4-part series. It'll be great.
Yeah.
Awesome.
All right.
All right.
Hey guys, thanks for listening to the podcast. If you'd like to learn more about the podcast, myself, or our guests, you can go to afamilystory.org. You can also go to afamilystory.org if you'd like to give. This is a listener-supported podcast, and we are incredibly grateful for your generosity. Hey, we have a Facebook group, and it's pretty cool. Rethinking God with Tacos. You can join us over there. Lots of incredible conversation and community taking place on that page. And you can also follow us on all the socials, Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, and others. Hey, I'd love it also if you went on iTunes and left a review or shared or tweeted or liked the podcast. Let your friends know that this is a good place to hear about the love of God. I pray grace and wonder over your day.